So it's not, we say to our clients, this nice, neat, binary business that's presented in the media, that there's a good side versus a bad side. It's a struggle between good and evil. It is a far more complicated position than that.
The knives are out for Cyril Ramaphosa. Julius Malema, Jacob Zuma, and Magashule are conspiring against him. Joining me to discuss this is Frans Cronje, director of the CRA. Frans, what do you think are the prospects for the president? Can he survive this threat to his leadership?
Yeah, we don't know, David. If the bulk of opinion in the ANC decide that he has to go, that will be the end of him. And that could happen this year. Depends where that bulk of opinion is going to land. And a lot of that's now going to be determined by this triumvirate that you describe, who are aligning against Mr. Ramaphosa for, at a superficial level, the very simple reason that its three members are deeply concerned that if the NPA continues along its current, admittedly slow track, and further evidence is led at the Zondo Commission, they might later be prosecuted for corruption and sent to prison for 15 years. So they are busy building an internal lobby around the ANC to set up the removal of Mr. Ramaphosa.
So, Frans, we've often advised our clients against a kind of binary thinking of a good ANC versus a bad ANC. Could you explain to our viewers why it is that we take this position?
Now, that's why I said the word superficial. At a superficial level, if you listen to my first answer, you think I just told you that there's a good ANC that's now gaining some ground on the bad ANC, and the bad ANC is worried and could lose, and then South Africa will recover if it loses. It's not what we said. It's more complicated than that. The triumvirate aligning against Mr. Ramaphosa is an exceptionally dangerous faction of that party. And if it comes to power in short order, the degree of demise South Africa will experience will become something quite spectacular. However, the side of the ANC that is in opposition to this exceptionally dangerous side is itself deeply problematic. And many of its members are themselves ensnared in allegations of corruption that are extremely serious. And they too will be watching this with great concern for the fact that should a process be set in motion of sweeping prosecutions, they too, up into the highest levels of the leadership ranks of the Ramaphosa faction, might find themselves before a judge and later are sent to prison for 15 years. So it's not, we say to our clients, this nice, neat, binary business that's presented in the media, that there's a good side versus a bad side. It's a struggle between good and evil. It is a far more complicated position than that.
So, Frans, what does this mean for the viability and the future prospects of South Africa going forward?
Yeah, from there follows the second piece of advice that we've been giving our clients for some time, that even should the Ramaphosa faction, let's call it that, survive this onslaught, which it might, and should it later prevail within the ANC, that does not mean that sweeping structural reforms to position the country as a more competitive investment destination will follow the next morning. Because within that Ramaphosa camp, there is limited appetite for the types of reforms that are necessary to position South Africa as a more competitive investment destination. And therefore, our advice remains that even should his side be able to see off the threat from the triumvirate you described, South Africa will not adopt the structural reforms necessary to position itself as one of the world's most exciting investment destinations.
Well, Frans, that might cause some cynicism amongst our viewers and our clients. What hope is there for reform further down the line?
Yeah, well, that caused deep depression amongst the viewers and the clients, and with good reason. But here, the third part of what we have to say becomes important. We ourselves are not so depressed. And the reason is that the odds are becoming pretty good that South Africa, at some point in this decade, we're making it 2024 for now, will experience a political realignment, which is a technical way to say the ANC might surrender its national majority, that will tip us into an era of coalition politics, out of which the odds are pretty good that a new reform movement might grow, which could do terribly well in the election of 2029 and lead the country with some success into the 2030s. In other words, our advice now is that through the short term and into the medium term, we don't think there is much of a prospect for the fundamental reform South Africa needs to become truly successful. However, we think that picture shifts towards the end of this decade. And what that means is that if you want to do well in the future South Africa, if you want to take advantage of its potential, you now need to have a pretty long-term perspective on the country. Put it differently, what you're likely to experience over the next decade is not going to be fundamentally different from the challenges of Eskom and violent protest action and crazy policy and some pretty wild economic numbers that you experienced over the past decade. And if you are an entity or a firm or an institution with that kind of long-term vision, you are probably pretty well positioned, as well as you can be on South Africa, to take advantage of the longer-term political prospects for the country.
Well, thanks very much, Frans. If you enjoyed this analysis, you might want to subscribe to the Center for Risk Analysis. We're running a 30-day free trial at the moment, and there is a link in the description below where you can access all of our content and online briefings. My name is David Ansara. This is the Center for Risk Analysis. Please do join us every weekday morning for another update from Frans and the rest of the CRA team. Until next time, take care.